welcome back to the Bible in 90 Days. We're on day 59. We're getting on to the third quarter, or the second, to the end of the second third, the third third of the book. If we go by day 30, day 60, day 90, we're right there at the second third. We're not quite to the New Testament yet, but we are getting through the prophets. Now, the Lamentations is the book that we're going to read today, and it is it's poetry, or maybe even wisdom literature from the end of Jeremiah. It's I'm gonna have to move this. I think that's going to be too loud. Sorry. It's poetry. It's a lamentation. It's exactly what it is. It's his crying over Jerusalem. It's an extra book of Jeremiah, kind of like Ecclesiastes is an extra book of Solomon. Lamentations. It's a beautiful poetry, and it's super saddening. There is a glimmer of hope in it, kind of right in the middle here, and I might pause right there just to kind of expound on that little glimmer of. It's like a dreary, bad, terrible day where the sun never shines, and then all of a sudden, a beam of light just comes out of the clouds, just for a moment. Then it goes back away. That's kind of how that's the way you feel reading Lamentations. And then we're going to begin the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel is a different, he's cut from a different cloth. His message is very stern, and he does a lot of sign acts. And I'll explain sign acts a little bit more as we go into them. But they're totally different. It's not the type of prophecy that you normally see. Ezekiel has a singular, he's definitely a strange bird as far as and all the prophets are. The thing is that all these prophets have their own personality, their own way about them, and they're all awesome, but none of them are well respected, and they're all kind of in their own thing, like I said, like I was saying in the review about Jeremiah being the guy with the sign on his chest, and in the movies or in the city, you'll see a guy with the sign on his chest that says the end is near, and he's and I always wondered when I was a kid seeing those, at least in the movies, like, what if that guy really was a prophet, You can tell a prophet, though, because the message of a prophet is always true. A prophet does not tell you falsehood. A prophet speaks from God. When he speaks from God, he only speaks of God. And most of what we have recorded from prophets is what they said of God. And as we saw in Jeremiah, there's enough biographical material in the books that you can kind of get an idea of the person's life, but you really can't. So you just really try and imagine it the best you can when you read into it. Well, let's jump into the book of Lamentations, and we will probably take kind of a somber tone with it, because it's not it's not Second Kings and Gideon, man. It's something else, or Judges and Gideon. I was thinking about that the other day. This is a totally sad book, man. It's called Lamentations. I mean, I don't know I hope you're not expecting. I'm glad I hear the sun shining today. I'm going to go outside after I get done reading this and bask. So, All right, I'm getting carried away. Let's jump into Lamentations, chapter 1. There's 5 chapters, and we're just going to read them all. How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she, who once was great among the nations. She who is queen among the provinces has now become a slave. Bitterly she weeps at night. Tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, there is no one to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have all become her enemies. After affliction and harsh labor, Judah has gone into exile. She dwells among the nations. She finds no resting place. All who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed festivals. All her gateways are desolate. Her priests groan, her young women grieve, and she is in bitter anguish. Her foes have become her masters. Her enemies are at ease. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Her children have gone into exile, captive before the foe. All the splendor has departed from daughter Zion. Her princes are like deer that find no pasture. In weakness they have fled before the pursuer. Verse 7. In the days of her affliction wandering, Jerusalem remembers all the treasures that were hers in days of old, when her people fell into the enemy hands. There was no one to help her. Her enemies looked at her and laughed at her destruction. Jerusalem has sinned greatly, and so has become unclean. All who honored her despise her, for they have seen her naked. She herself groans and turns away. Her filthiness clung to her skirts. She did not consider her future. Her fall was astounding. There was no one to comfort her. There was none to comfort her. Look, Lord, on my affliction, for the enemy has triumphed. The enemy laid hands on all her treasures. She saw pagan nations under her sanctuary. Those you had forbidden to enter your assembly. All her people groan as they search for bread. They barter their treasure for food to keep themselves alive. Look, Lord, and consider, for I am despised. It is nothing to you at all. Is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look around and see. Is any suffering like my suffering that was inflicted on me, that the Lord brought me in the day of his fierce anger? From on high he sent fire, sent it down onto my bones. He spread a net for my feet and turned me back. He made me desolate, faint, all the day long. Verse 14. My sins have been bound into a yoke. By his hands they were woven together. They have been hung on my neck. The Lord has sapped my strength. He has given me into the hands of those I cannot withstand. The Lord has rejected all the warriors in my midst. He has summoned an army against me to crush my young men. In his winepress the Lord has trampled virgin daughter Judah. That is why I weep, and my eyes overflow with tears. No one is near to comfort me, no one to restore my spirit. My children are destitute because the enemy has prevailed. Zion stretches out her hands, but there is no one to comfort her. The Lord has decreed for Jacob that his neighbors become his foes. Jerusalem has become an unclean thing among them. The Lord is righteous, yet I rebelled against his command. Listen, all you peoples. Look on my suffering. My young men and young women have gone into exile. I called to my allies, but they betrayed me. My priests and my elders perished in the city, while they searched for food to keep themselves alive. Verse 20. See, Lord, how distressed I am. I am in torment within, and in my heart I am disturbed, for I have been most rebellious. Outside the sword bereaves, inside there is only death. People have heard my groaning, but there is no one to comfort me. All my enemies have heard of my distress, yet they rejoice at what you have done. May you bring the day you have announced, so they may become like me. Let all their wicked come before you. Deal with them as you have dealt with me, because of all my sins. My groans are many, and my heart is faint. Chapter 2. There are 5 chapters of this, by the way. It's not for the faint of heart. Or it is for the faint of heart. I don't know. How the Lord has discovered daughter Zion with the cloud of his anger. He has hurled down the splendor of Israel from heaven to earth. He has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. Without pity the Lord has swallowed up all the dwellings of Jacob. In his wrath he has thrown down the strongholds of daughter Judah. He has brought her kingdom and its princes down to the ground in dishonor. In fierce anger he has cut off every horn of Israel. He has withdrawn his right hand at the approach of the enemy. He has burned in Jacob like a flaming fire that consumes everything around it. Like an enemy, he has strung his bow. His right hand is ready. Like a foe he has slain all who were pleasing to the eye. He poured out his wrath like fire on the tent of daughter Zion. The Lord is like an enemy. He has swallowed up Israel. He has swallowed up all her palaces and destroyed her strongholds. He has multiplied mourning and lamentation for daughter Judah. He has laid waste his dwelling like a garden. He has destroyed his place of meeting. The Lord has made Zion forget her appointed festivals and her Sabbaths. In his fierce anger he has spurned both king and priest. The Lord has rejected his altar and abandoned his sanctuary. He has given the walls of her palaces into the hands of the enemy. They have raised a shout in the house of the Lord, as on the day of an appointed festival. Verse 8. The Lord determined to tear down the wall around daughter Zion. He stretched out a measuring line and did not withhold his hand from destroying. He made ramparts and walls lament. Together they wasted away. Her gates have sunk into the ground. Their bars he has broken and destroyed. Her king and her princes are exiled among the nations. The law is no more, and her prophets no longer find visions from the Lord. The elders of daughter Zion sit on the ground in silence. They have sprinkled dust on their heads and put on sackcloth. The young women of Jerusalem have bowed their heads to the ground. Verse 11. My eyes fail from weeping. I am in torment within. My heart is poured out on the ground, because my people are destroyed, because children and infants faint in the streets of the city. They say to their mothers, "Where is bread and wine?" as they faint like the wounded in the streets of the city, as their lives ebb away in their mother's arms. What can I say for you? With what can I compare you, daughter Jerusalem? To what can I liken you, that I may comfort you, virgin daughter Zion? Your wound is as deep as the sea. Who can heal you? The visions of your prophets were false and worthless. They did not expose your sin to ward off your captivity. The prophecies they gave you were false and misleading. All who pass your way clap their hands at you. They scoff and shake their heads at daughter Jerusalem. Is this the city that was called the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? 16. All your enemies open their mouths wide against you. They scoff and gnash their teeth and say, "We have swallowed her up. This is the day we have waited for. We have lived to see it." The Lord has done what he planned. He has fulfilled his word, which he decreed long ago. He has overthrown you without pity. He has let the enemy gloat over you. He has exalted the horn of your foes. The hearts of the people cry out to the Lord. Your walls of daughter Zion, let your tears flow like a river, day and night. Give yourself no relief, or your eyes no rest. Verse 19. Arise, cry out in the night as the watches of the night begin, to pour out your heart like water in the presence of the Lord. Lift up your hands to him for the lives of your children who faint from hunger at every street corner. Look, Lord, and consider, whom have you ever treated like this? Should women eat their offspring, the children they have cared for? Should priest and prophet be killed in the sanctuary of the Lord? Young and old lie together in the dust of the streets. And my young men and young women have fallen by the sword. You have slain them in the day of your anger. You have slaughtered them without pity. As you summon to a feast day, you summoned against me terrors on every side. In the day of the Lord's anger, no one escaped or survived. Those I cared for and reared, my enemy has destroyed. Chapter 3. I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of the Lord's wrath. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again, all day long. He has made my skin and my flesh grow old. He has broken my bones. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness, like those long dead. He has walled me in so I cannot escape. He has weighed me down with chains. Even when I call out for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has barred my way with blocks of stone. He has made my paths crooked. Like a bear lying in wait, like a lion in hiding, he dragged me from the path and mangled me, and left me without help. He drew his bow and made me the target of his arrows. He pierced my heart with the arrows from his quiver. I became the laughing stock of all my people. They mock me in song all day long. He has filled me with bitter herbs and given me gall to drink. He has broken my teeth with gravel and trampled me in the dust. I have been deprived of peace. I have forgotten what prosperity is. I say, my splendor is gone. All that I had hoped for from the Lord. All that I had hoped from the Lord. And this is the little ray of sunlight that I was telling you about. Now listen, you see we have the lowest of the low. He's at his bottom. He's at the very bottom. Now watch what happens. Verse 19. I remember my affliction and my wandering, and the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Verse 22. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young. Let him sit alone in silence, for the Lord has laid it on him. Let him bury his face in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him offer his cheek to the one who would strike him, and let him be filled with disgrace. 31. For no one is cast off by the Lord forever. Though he brings grief, he will show compassion. So great is his unfailing love. For he does not unwillingly bring affliction or grief to anyone. To crush underfoot all prisoners in the land, to deny people their rights before the Most High, to deprive them of justice, would not the Lord see such things? 37. Who can speak and have it happen if the Lord has not decreed it? It is not from the mouth of the Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that both calamities and good things come? Why should the living complain when punished for their sins? Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. Let us lift up our hearts and our hands to God in heaven and say, We have sinned and rebelled, and you have not forgiven. You have covered yourself with anger and pursued us, and you have slain us without you have slain without pity. You have covered yourself with a cloud, so that no prayer can get through. You have made us scum and refuse among the nations. All our enemies have opened their mouths wide against us. We have suffered terror and pitfalls, ruin and destruction. Streams of tears flow from my eyes because my people are destroyed. My eyes will flow unceasingly without relief, until the Lord looks down from heaven and sees. What I see brings grief to my soul because of all the women of my city. Those who were my enemies without cause hunted me like a bird. They tried to end my life in a pit. They threw stones at me. The waters closed over my head. I thought I was about to perish. I called on your name, Lord, from the depths of the pit, and you heard my plea. Do not close your ears to my cry for relief. You came near when I called you, and you said, Do not fear. You, Lord, took up my case. You redeemed my life, Lord. You have seen the wrong done to me. Uphold my cause. You have seen the depth of their vengeance, all their plots against me. Lord, you have heard their insults, all their plots against me, what my enemies whisper and mutter against me all day long. Look at them, sitting or standing, they mock me in their songs. Pay them back for what they deserve, Lord, for what their hands have done. Put a veil over their hearts, and may your curse be on them. Pursue them in anger and destroy them from under the heavens of the Lord. Chapter 4. How the gold has lost its luster, the fine gold become dull. The sacred gems are scattered at every corner, every street corner. How the precious children of Zion, once worth their weight in gold, are now considered as pots of clay, the work of a potter's hands. Even jackals offer their breasts to nurse their young, but my people have become heartless like ostriches in the desert. Because of the infant's tongue sticks to the because of thirst, the infant's tongue sticks to the roof of its mouth. The children beg for bread, and no one gives it to them. Those who once ate delicacies are destitute in the streets. Those brought up in royal purple now lie on ash heaps. The punishment of my people is greater than that of Sodom, which was overthrown in a moment, without a hand turned to help her. Her princes were brighter than snow and whiter than milk. Their bodies were more ruddy than rubies, their appearance like lapis lazuli. But now they are blacker than soot, and they have not recognized and are not recognized in the streets. Their skin has shriveled on their bones. They have become as dry as a stick. Verse 9. Those killed by the sword are better off than those who die of famine. Racked with hunger, they waste away, or lack of food from the field. For their own hands, with their own hands, compassionate women have cooked their own children, who have become their food. When my people were destroyed, the Lord has given full vents to his wrath. He has poured out his fierce anger. He kindled a fire in Zion that consumed her foundations. The kings of the earth did not believe, nor did any of the peoples of the world, that enemies and foes could enter the gates of Jerusalem. But it happened because of the sins of her prophets and the iniquities of her priests, who shed within her the blood of the righteous. Now they grope through the streets as if they were blind, so they are defiled with blood, that no one dares to touch their garments. Go away, you are unclean, people cry to them. Away, away, do not touch us. When they flee and wander about, the people amongst the nations say, they can stay here no longer. Verse 16. The Lord himself has scattered them. He no longer watches over them. The priests are shown no honor, their elders no favor. Moreover, our eyes failed, looking in vain for help. From our towers we watched for a nation that could not save us. People stalked us at every step, so we could not walk in our streets. Our end was near, our days were numbered, for our end had come. Our pursuers were swifter than eagles in the sky. They chased us over the mountains, and lay in wait for us in the desert. The Lord anointed our very life breath was caught in their traps. We thought that under his shadow we would live among the nations. Rejoice and be glad, daughter Edom, you who lived in the land of Uz. But to you also the cup will be passed. You will be drunk and stripped naked. Your punishment will end, daughter Zion. He will not prolong your exile, but he will punish your sin, daughter Edom, and expose your wickedness. Chapter 5. Remember, Lord, what has happened to us. Look and see the disgrace. Our inheritance has been turned over to strangers, our homes to foreigners, for we have become fatherless. Our mothers are widows. We must buy the water we drink. Our wood can only be had at a price. Those who pursue us are at our heels. We are weary and find no rest. We submitted to Egypt and Assyria to get enough bread. Our ancestors sinned and are no more, and we bear their punishment. Slaves rule over us, and there is no one to free us from their hands. We get our bread at the risk of our lives because of the sword in the desert. Our skin is as hot as an oven, feverish from hunger. Women have been violated in Zion, and virgins in the towns of Judah. Princes have been hung up by their hands. Elders are shown no respect. Young men toil at the millstones. Boys stagger under loads of wood. The elders are gone from the city gate. The young men have stopped their music. Joy has gone from our hearts. Our dancing has turned to mourning. The crown has fallen from our head. Woe to us, for we have sinned. Because of this our hearts are faint. Because of these things our eyes grow dim. For Mount Zion, which lies desolate, with jackals prowling over it. You, Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures from generation to generation. Why do you always forget us? Why do you forsake us so long? Restore us to yourself, Lord. that we may return. Renew our days of old, unless you have utterly rejected us, and are angry with us beyond measure. That's it, man. That Lamentations is so hard, man. It's there are times when and I was just thinking about Josephus. I've got this book. This is an English book of Josephus, and that is the next. You have to use the word apocalypse. It's an apocalypse. What that is a time when an entire city was just destroyed with famine. And what he said was that Sodom and Gomorrah had it better because everyone died in an instant. Sodom got smited by fire and brimstone and hail, like a volcano exploded in it. Like Pompeii, Pompeii, it was just gone. It was there, and then it was gone. All the people died in an instant. He said that was better. If you read any of the accounts of towns that have been laid to waste, like Jerusalem had, Josephus, that book is hard to read. It's but because it's one thing to read about war and stuff, but when you have a famine so great that mothers are eating their children, and there's some stories from Josephus that would just make you really sick. But that stuff happens, and you can't really say I would never do that, because you've never been in that situation. If you've never been in that situation, you don't know what you would do. Your mind goes away from you after so long. I'm not saying that I have been in that situation, but now Ezekiel was carried away in the first time that Babylon came and raided Jerusalem. What Babylon did when they raided Jerusalem was they came in and sacked it, and then they remember, after Hezekiah showed them everything he had and everything they planned out their attack, and it took them a long time to do it. See, Josiah went to war against some people, and he died. Well, as soon as Josiah was a good king, remember? Josiah was a good king at the end, and then his son was apostate. His son went bad. So God dropped the hammer on Jerusalem, and it was after Assyria had already destroyed the northern kingdoms, the 10 tribes up north. Now, and then Babylon was busy destroying Assyria, and they completely laid waste to Assyria, to Nineveh. We're going to read a little bit more about that when we get into Jonah and Nehemiah. Those are two prophecies against Nineveh. So, and I'll explain those a little bit more then. Ezekiel is carried into captivity in Babylon after Jerusalem was sacked, and he is tasked as a watchman. He's called to be a prophet. He sees these visions, and God has him do these sign acts, and he's actually it's funny, kind of, if it can be described that way, that it's funny, but it's definitely unique. And I'm not going to tell you what he does, because I just want to go through the story with you. But we get some really cool. Remember Jacob's ladder in Genesis, when Jacob sees the vision of the ladder coming down, there's stairway coming down from heaven with the angels going up and coming down, and the throne at the top. Well, we have some of that visionary stuff here right at the beginning of Ezekiel. Now, we're only going to read 2 pages. It's 6 chapters, but it's only 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. So it won't take but a minute, and then we'll really get into Ezekiel a little bit more tomorrow. Ezekiel chapter 1. In my 13th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day, while I was among the exiles, from the Kibar River, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. On the 5th of the month, it was the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim, the word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, by the Kibar River, in the land of the Babylonians. There the hand of the Lord was on him. I looked, and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, and an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance with their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf, and gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands, and all 4 of them had faces and wings. And the wings of one touched the wings of another. Each one went straight ahead, and they did not turn as they moved. Okay? I want you to I know that that's difficult to image, but I want you to try, and I'm going to pause in just a minute. Their faces looked like this. Each of the 4 had a face of a human being, and on the right side, each had the face of a lion. On the left side, the face of an ox, and also had the face of an eagle, and such were their faces that each had 2 wings spreading out upward, each wing touching that of the creature on either side. Each had 2 other wings covering its body. Each went straight ahead. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, without turning as they went. The appearance of the living creatures was like burning coals of fire, or like torches. The fire moved back and forth among the creatures. It was bright. The lightning flashed out of it, and the creatures sped back and forth like flashes of lightning. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. Now keep imagining this, okay? There have been pictures drawn of this. Maybe you've seen pictures drawn of this, but just try and picture this in your mind while we're reading it. They sparkled like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all the 4 rims were covered and were full of eyes all around. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved, and when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them. Because of the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels, when the creatures moved, they also moved. When the creatures stood still, they also stood still. And when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels rose along with them, because of the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Spread out above the heads of the living creatures was what looked like something like a vault, sparkling like crystal, and an awesome underground under the vault were their wings were stretched out toward one another, and each had 2 wings covering its body. And when the creatures moved, I heard the sound of their wings, like the roar of rushing waters, like the voice of the Almighty, like the tumult of an army. When they stood, they lowered their wings. All right, verse 25. I want to pause right there just for a second. What do the other nations call gods? They would build an idol, either a little one or a big one, and they would have it. If you had money, you would carve it out of wood, or you would have somebody make your god for you, and then they would cover it with gold, and it would be a person, a woman, or a thing, or a bird, or any kind of idol. And you would have this, and this would be your god. And you would pray to it, and you would do that with it. And this was the idolatry that God was always against, was that these would be your gods. You would keep them in your house, and you would pray to them. And you would treat them like they were living things. Like they were, and you'd give them the credit for being the creator of the universe, for being the creator of everything. And God was offended by that. Well, it is... As I read that description of this entourage, this is the presence of God, is what he described. This is what Jacob described at the top of the ladder. This is the same kind of thing. It's maybe a different perspective of it, but he's seeing it in a storm, and it's moving and turning and going up and coming down, and it's this vision of the presence of God Almighty in his throne, and he's about to speak in verse 25. So what we have is this thing, and I think the reason for all of that description of what we saw is that it's something that you cannot carve out of a piece of wood and worship. Even if you could, you wouldn't. You would understand that this is not something that you can represent in a figure. God is so much greater than that, and that's what this communicates to me. I kind of planned on talking about that. That is a great thing to question and wonder about. Verse 25. Then there came a voice from above the vault over the heads as they stood with lowered wings. Above the vault over their heads what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli, and above on the throne was a figure like that of a man. I saw from what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like glowing metal, as if full of fire, and from there down he looked like a fire. A brilliant light surrounded him, like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day. So was the radiance around him. This is what the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. When I saw it, I fell face down, and I heard the voice of one speaking. Chapter 2. He said to me, Son of man. That comes up later, especially when we get to Mark. Stand up on your feet, and I will speak to you. As he spoke, the Spirit came to me and raised me up to my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. He said, Son of man, I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me, and their ancestors have been in revolt against me to this very day. The people whom I am sending you to are obstinate and stubborn. Say to them, This is what the sovereign Lord says, and whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are a rebellious people, they will know that a prophet has been among them. And you, Son of man, do not be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Do not be afraid of what they say, or be terrified of them, though they are a rebellious people. You must speak my words to them, whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are rebellious. But you, son of man, listen to what I say to you. Do not rebel like that rebellious people. Open your mouth and eat what I give you. It's pretty serious, isn't it? Verse 9. Then I looked, and I saw a hand stretched out to me. In it was a scroll, which he unrolled before me. On both sides of it were written words of lament and mourning and woe. Chapter 3. And he said to me, Son of man, eat what is before you, eat this scroll, and then go and speak to the people of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. Literally, eat. Then he said to me, Son of man, eat this scroll I am giving you, and fill your stomach with it. So I ate it, and it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. Then he said to me, Son of man, go now to the people of Israel and speak my words to them. You are not being sent to a people of obscure speech and strange language, but to the people of Israel. Do not to many peoples of obscure speech and strange language. Those words you cannot understand. Surely, if I had sent you to them, they would have listened to you. But the people of Israel are not willing to listen to you, because they are not willing to listen to me. For all the Israelites are hardened and obstinate, but I will make you as unyielding and hardened as they are. I will make your forehead like the hardest stone, harder than flint. Do not be afraid of them or terrified by them, though they be a rebellious people. And he said to me, Son of man, listen carefully, and take to heart all the words I speak to you. Like, how could you not? You see this situation? Remember, he's still in front of this glory of the Lord thing. Go now to your people in exile and speak to them. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, whether they listen or fail to listen. Then the Spirit of the Lord lifted me up, and I heard behind me a loud rumbling sound as the glory of the Lord rose from the place where it was standing. It was the sound of wings of the living creatures brushing against each other, and the sound of the wheels beside them, a loud rumbling sound. The Spirit then lifted me up and took me away, and I went in bitterness and in anger of my spirit, with the strong hand of the Lord on me. I came to the exiles who lived in Tel Aviv, near the Kibar River, and there they were living, and I sat among them for 7 days, deeply distressed. Dude, he goes right to in spirit. He like that's what I was saying, either in the review or whatever. How he's astrally projecting. He's like having a vision of what's going on in Jerusalem for 7 days, so he gets to see like Jeremiah's position. And it kind of a thought that comes to my mind is that he actually just gets to see Jeremiah's vision. You know, like he's in this vision stance, trance, whatever you want to call it, and he sees what Jeremiah's eyes see. That's what I picture here. Now that might not be right. It might be right. It might not be right. But that's the way I see it. It's like God has a prophet in Babylon, and he has a prophet in Judah, and it's not that they probably don't even know, but they can see what each other sees. I might write a story about that one day. That'd be pretty cool, huh? All right. Verse 16. At the end of 7 days, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them a warning from me. When I say to a wicked person, you will surely die, and you will not harm them or speak out to dissuade them from their evil ways in order to save their life. That wicked person will die for their sin, and I will hold you accountable for their blood. But if you do warn the wicked person, and they do not turn from their wickedness or from their evil ways, they will die for their sin, but you will have saved yourself. There's a there's some evangelism motivation right there, huh? Again, when a righteous person turns from their righteousness and does evil, and I will put a stumbling block before them, they will die. Since you did not warn them, they will die for their sin. The righteous things that a person did will not be remembered, and I will hold you accountable for their blood. But if you do warn the righteous person not to sin, and they do not sin, they will surely live because they took warning, and you will have saved yourself. Verse 22. The hand of the Lord was on me there, and he said to me, Get up and go out to the plain, and there I will speak to you. So I got up and I went out to the plain, and the glory of the Lord was standing there. The glory of the Lord I had seen by the Kibar River, and I fell face down. Like the glory I had seen by the Kibar River, and I fell face down. Then the Spirit of the Lord came into me and raised me to my feet. He spoke to me and said, Go shut yourself inside your house, and you, son of man, they will tie you with ropes, and you will be bound, so that you cannot go out among the people. So I will make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth, so that you will be silent, unable to rebuke them, for they are a rebellious people. But when I speak to you, I will open your mouth, and you shall say to them, This is what the sovereign Lord says. Whoever will listen, let them listen. And whoever will refuse, let them refuse, for they are a rebellious people. That's the beginning of the sign acts there. He's told him to go bind himself in a chair, and not speak, only speak the word of God. Now, you remember when we were reading in Jeremiah, you had God speaking, and Isaiah, you have God speak. You have the prophet speaking, but it's God speaking. It's written in the prophet, but it's like first person God. I am. You have all of that. So we have some of that going on here too. Chapter 4. Now, son of man, take a block of clay and put it in front of you, and draw the city of Jerusalem on it. This is another sign act. Okay, this is the second one. Then lay siege to it. So he's telling them to play in the dirt. Erect siege works against it, build a ramp up to it, set up camps against it, and put battering rams around it. Then take an iron pan and place an iron wall between you and the city, and turn your face toward it. It will be under siege, and you shall besiege it. This will be a sign to the people of Israel. Then lie on your left side. Okay, that was one of the sign acts. He told him to build a little place and put an iron pan in between you and it. Now, Isaiah represents the Lord being shut off to it. This is something that really reoccurs in the Bible a lot. All right, here's another one. Verse 4. Then lie on your left side and put the sin of the people of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear the sin for the number of days you lie on your side. I have assigned you the same number of days as in the years of their sins. So for 390 days you will bear the sin of the people of Israel. Lay on your side for 390 days, he said. After you have finished this, lie down again, for this time on your right side, and bear the sin of the people of Judah. I have assigned you 40 days, a day for each year. Turn your face toward the siege of Jerusalem, and so the little thing he made, and with bread and with barred arm prophesy against her. I will tie you up with ropes, so that you cannot turn from one side to the other until you have finished the days of your siege. Okay. Here's another one. Okay. And I don't know if these are like consecutive or if these are all taking, but this is years long stuff. It's like, Verse 9. Take wheat and barley, beans and lentils, millet and spelt, and put them in a storage jar, and use them to make bread for yourself. You are to eat it during the 390 days you lie on your side. Weigh out 20 shekels of food and eat each day. 20 shekels of food each day, and eat it at set times. Also measure out a sixth of a hin of water, and drink it at set times. Eat the food as you would a loaf of barley bread. Bake it in the sight of the people. Listen to this. Using human excrement for fuel. The Lord said, this is the way the people of Israel will eat defiled food from the nations where I will drive them. Verse 14. Then I said, Not so, sovereign Lord, I have never defiled myself. From my youth until now, I have never eaten anything found dead or torn by wild animals. No impure meat has ever entered my mouth. 15. Very well, he said. I will let you bake bread over cow dung instead of human excrement. So you had a little bit of a compromise there, huh? 16. He said to me, he then said to me, Son of man, I am about to cut off the food supply in Jerusalem. The people will eat rationed food in anxiety, and drink rationed water in despair. For food and water will be scarce, and they will be appalled at the sight of each other, and I will waste away because of their sin. He's talking about what's happening in Jerusalem. Remember what we just read in Lamentations. These things all go like clockwork together. And man. Chapter 5. Now, son of man, take a sharp sword and use it as a barber's razor to shave your head. This is another sign act. And your beard. Then take a set of scales and divide up the hair. When the days of your siege come to an end, burn a third of the hair inside the city, and take a third and strike it with the sword all around the city, and scatter a third to the wind. For I will pursue them with drawn sword. But take a few hairs and tuck them away in the folds of your garment. Again take a few of these and throw them into the fire and burn them up. A fire will spread from there to all Israel. Verse 5. This is what the sovereign Lord says. This is Jerusalem, which I have set in the center of the nations, with countries all around her. Yet in her wickedness she has rebelled against my laws and decrees more than the nations and countries around her. She has rejected my laws and not followed my decrees. Verse 7. Therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says. You have become more unruly than the nations around you, and have not followed my decrees or kept my laws. You have not even conformed to the standards of the nations around you. Verse 8, therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself am against you, Jerusalem, and I will inflict punishment on you in the sight of the nations. Because of all your detestable idols, I will do to you what I have never done before and will never do again. Therefore in your midst your parents will eat their children, and children will eat their parents. I will inflict punishment on you and will scatter all your survivors to the winds. Therefore, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your vile images and detestable practice, I myself will shave you. I will not look on you with pity or spare you. A third of your people will die of the plague or perish by famine inside you. A third will fall by the sword outside your walls, and a third will scatter to the winds and pursue with drawn sword. 13. Then my anger will cease, and my wrath against them will subside, and I will be avenged. And when I have spent my wrath on them, they will know that I, the Lord, have spoken in my zeal. 14. I will make you a ruin and a reproach among the nations around you. In the sight of all who pass by, you will be a reproach and a taunt, a warning and an object of horror to all the nations around you when I inflict punishment on you in anger and wrath with this stinging rebuke. I, the Lord, have spoken. When I shoot you with my deadly and destructive arrows of famine, I will shoot to destroy you. I will bring more and more famine upon you and cut off your supply of food. I will send famine and wild beasts against you. They will leave you childless. Plague and bloodshed will sweep through you. I will bring disaster. I will bring the sword against you. I, the Lord, have spoken. Chapter 6. The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against the mountains of Israel. Prophesy against them and say, You mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord, the word of the sovereign Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says, to the mountains and the hills, to the ravines and valleys. I am about to bring a sword against you. I will destroy your high places, your altars will be demolished, and your incense altars will be smashed, and I will slay your people in front of your idols. I will say to the dead bodies of the Israelites in front of their idols, I will lay the dead bodies of the Israelites in front of their idols. I will scatter your bones around your altars. Wherever you live, the towns will be laid waste, and the high places demolished, so that your altars will be laid waste and devastated, your idols smashed and ruined, your incense altars broken down, and what you have made wiped out. Your people will fall slain among you, and you will know that I am the Lord. Verse 8. But I will spare some, for some of you escaped the sword when you are scattered among the lands and nations. Then in the nations where you have been carried captive, those who escape will remember me, how I have been grieved by their adulterous hearts, which have turned away from me by their eyes, which have lusted after their idols. They will loathe themselves for the evil they have done, for all their detestable practices, and they will know that I am the Lord, and I did not threaten in vain or bring this calamity on them. Verse 11. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Strike your hands together and stamp your feet and cry out, Alas! Because of all the wicked and detestable practices of the people of Israel, for they will fall by the sword, famine, and plague. One who is far will die of the plague, and one who is near will fall by the sword, and anyone who survives is spared will die from famine. So I will pour out my wrath on them, and they will know that I am the Lord. Then their people will lie slain among their idols and around their altars, on every high hill and on all the mountain tops, under every spreading tree and every leafy oak, places where they offered fragrant incenses to all their idols, and I will stretch out my hand against them, and make the land a desolate waste, from the desert to Diblah. Wherever they live, then they will know that I am the Lord. So, Ezekiel really puts it all together for you. He's what he's done with this thing. It told him to shave all of his hair off of his head. And that's what all of that was just about in that chapter, that prophecy. It's God's razor of judgment. He shaves his head and takes the hair and he divides it into 3 parts. And 1/3 he throws on Jerusalem and stabs with a sword. 1/3 he burns up, and the other third he takes a few and he keeps them in his belt, right, in his garment. And that's what happened. That's what we just read about through Jeremiah, and that's what Isaiah prophesied ahead of time. And so we have all of this stuff being acted out. Oh, man. The Bible is such a powerful book, isn't it? It's so incredible. And you feel bad for them, and you know that you feel angry for them. You feel God's anger for them because they never tried. And I don't want. I'm not anti-Semitic. I think that the Jews are a necessary people, but you start to understand why people like Martin Luther were anti-Semitic, because you read this stuff and you get the wrong kind of heart about them. God put it in them to do it and to do right, but they couldn't choose to do right. They just always failed at it. Don't we fail? We can't judge them because because we need forgiveness ourselves. We can't just be we're not the judge. That's where we mess up a lot in our lives. We're not the judge. I think good. All right, guys. Well, that was some heavy reading for today. God loves you. I love you too. I hope you have a wonderful day.